when I first stepped off the transport pod onto the moss-covered landing pad of Zentra 7, a planet so far from Earth that even the stars looked different in its night sky, I had no idea how lonely I would become. My name is Joran, a simple enough name for a man who once taught botany at a small university on Mars Colony 6 before deciding to take a sabbatical, or what I now suspect was more like an escape, to work as a planetary surveyor in one of the galaxy's most remote sectors. The assignment promised solitude, clean air, untouched forests, and mountains that scraped the edge of the atmosphere. What it didn't mention was the silence, so deep it echoed in your bones. The wooden cabin they gave me stood alone on a ridge above a violet valley, built from local timber that smelled faintly of cinnamon and burnt sugar when it rained. It had 3 rooms, a stone fireplace, and windows so large they made you feel like you were floating above the clouds. For the first few days, I wandered around unpacking boxes, marveling at the twin moons rising over the snow-capped peaks, and trying not to notice how every sound, the creak of a floorboard, the whistle of wind through the eaves, seemed to answer back with emptiness. Then she arrived. They called her Lera. She came down the winding mountain path one morning just as the second sun was peeking over the eastern ridge, casting long lavender shadows across the frost-laced grass. At first, I thought she was a mirage, her skin a soft shade of deep amethyst, shimmering slightly under the light like crushed gemstone dust, and her hair flowing behind her like liquid silver, weightless despite the breeze. She wore a simple tunic of woven gray fabric, practical yet elegant, and carried a satchel slung over one shoulder. Her eyes, large, almond-shaped, and glowing faintly like moonlight caught in water, locked onto mine with calm curiosity. "I have been assigned to assist with domestic maintenance," she said, her voice melodic but firm, each word shaped with precision, as if she had rehearsed them many times. I nodded dumbly, still processing the fact that my new neighbor wasn't another grizzled scientist or a robotic cleaner drone, but a living, breathing alien woman sent to mop my floors. Lera worked silently at first, moving through the cabin with a quiet grace that bordered on hypnotic. She swept the hardwood with a broom made of dried reeds, wiped down counters with a sponge that expanded when wet, and folded my clothes into perfect squares that looked like origami sculptures. I watched her from the kitchen table, pretending to read reports on soil composition while actually stealing glances at the way her fingers moved, delicate, efficient, almost musical in their rhythm. After a week, I finally worked up the courage to speak. Do you always wear your hair like that?" I asked, instantly regretting it. It sounded stupid even in my head. But Lera paused, turned, and smiled. Not a wide grin, but a subtle lifting at the corners of her lips that lit up her entire face. "It is customary among my people," she replied. "White signifies wisdom, purple our clan lineage." I blinked. "So, you're wise and royal?" She laughed then, a soft, chiming sound like wind through crystal bells, and said, "Not royal, just from a long line of housekeepers." That broke the ice. From then on, we talked. At first, it was only during her visits, 3 times a week, always in the mornings. We spoke about small things. The weather patterns on Zentra 7, 2 seasons. Blooming and freezing, the strange 6-legged deer-like creatures that sometimes nibbled at the garden fence, and the way the northern lights here danced in spirals instead of waves. I told her about Earth, about oceans, pizza, dogs, and why humans cried when they were happy. She listened intently, tilting her head like a curious bird, asking questions that revealed both innocence and startling depth. "You mean you enjoy eating something covered in red fruit juice that stains your fingers and makes your tongue burn?" she asked after I described strawberries with balsamic vinegar. "Yes," I said, laughing. "It's complicated." She nodded solemnly. "Like love." That word hung in the air longer than it should have. Over time, Lera began staying longer after cleaning. She'd brew tea in the little pot I'd brought from home, a ritual she quickly adopted with near-religious seriousness, using leaves from a bush outside that tasted like mint and lavender. We sat by the fire, wrapped in wool blankets, watching the twin moons rise as she told me stories of her people, the Vathari, who lived in underground cities beneath the planet's icy crust. They valued order, harmony, and service above all else. Emotions were regulated, relationships structured, and personal desires kept in careful balance. "We do not rush into feelings," she explained once. "We let them grow like roots, slow, unseen, until they can support the tree." I remember staring into the flames, wondering if she knew how much I already admired her. Not just for her beauty, though that was undeniable, but for the quiet strength in her presence, the way she carried herself like someone who knew exactly who she was, even in a world not her own. One evening, during a particularly fierce storm, the power went out. Wind howled around the cabin like a pack of spectral wolves, and rain lashed against the windows in thick sheets. I fumbled for candles, cursing as I knocked over a stack of books. Then, a soft glow filled the room. Lera had activated a small orb from her satchel, one of her people's tools, that emitted a pale blue light, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. "Is this better?" she asked. I nodded, suddenly aware of how close we were standing. Thunder cracked overhead, and without thinking, I reached out to steady a wobbling shelf. My hand brushed hers. A jolt ran through me, part electricity, part something deeper, older. We both froze. Her white hair framed her face like a halo in the dim light, and for a moment, I thought she might pull away. Instead, she looked at me, really looked, and whispered, "Your pulse is elevated." I swallowed. Yeah, must be the storm. But it wasn't the storm. After that night, something shifted. Our conversations grew longer, heavier. I started looking forward to her visits with a kind of desperate anticipation. When she wasn't there, I found myself noticing things. The indentation her body left on the couch, the faint scent of ozone and wildflowers that lingered after she left, the way the house felt colder, quieter, somehow incomplete. I began leaving little things for her. A sketch I'd drawn of the valley, a jar of honey from a hive I'd discovered near the stream, a translated poem about distant stars. She never said much, but I saw the way her eyes softened when she found them. Once, I caught her humming a human lullaby I'd played on my old music box. When I asked where she'd learned it, she simply said, "I listen to everything you leave behind." Then came the day I realized I was in love with her. It wasn't dramatic. No lightning strike, no grand revelation. It happened while I was peeling potatoes in the kitchen, and she was sweeping near the window, her reflection dancing in the glass. Sunlight poured in, turning her silver hair into molten thread, and for no reason at all, I thought, I want to wake up to this every morning for the rest of my life. The thought hit me like a physical blow. I dropped the potato. Water splashed across the floor. Lera turned, concerned. "Are you injured?" I shook my head, heart pounding. "No, just lost in thought." She tilted her head. "About what?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. How could I explain this? That somewhere between her explaining Vathari tea ceremonies and me teaching her how to whistle, a skill she claimed violated natural resonance laws, I had fallen, completely hopelessly, in love with an alien maid from a species that didn't believe in spontaneous romance? I didn't tell her. Couldn't. What would I even say? "Hey, Lera, I know your culture believes emotions should grow like roots, but mine just exploded like a supernova and I think I'm dying." It sounded ridiculous, so I buried it, smiled when she came, laughed at her dry jokes. "Your planet has weather? How inefficient." Pretended my chest didn't ache when she left. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. A month later, a distress signal crackled over my emergency band. An automated ping from a crashed scout vessel near the northern glaciers. Standard procedure demanded I report it, but given the remoteness and the incoming blizzard, rescue teams wouldn't arrive for weeks. Couldn't ignore it. Strapping on thermal gear, I prepared to make the trek. Lera showed up earlier than expected, her usual calm replaced by sharp urgency. "You cannot go," she said flatly. "The storm will kill you." I tried to explain protocol, duty, the chance someone might still be alive. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "I know these mountains. I've tracked storms since childhood. If you go, you won't return." I hesitated. "Then come with me." She stared at me. "That would violate assignment parameters." "Screw parameters," I snapped. "People might be dying." Silence stretched between us. Then, to my shock, she turned and began gathering supplies, thermal wraps, oxygen boosters, navigation crystals. "I am not coming as your maid," she said quietly. "I am coming as a guide. And if you die, I will never forgive myself." We set out at dawn. The climb was brutal. Winds screamed like banshees, flinging ice shards that stung like needles. Visibility dropped to mere feet. More than once, I slipped, catching myself on jagged rock or Lera's strong arm pulling me back. She moved with uncanny precision, reading the terrain like a language only she understood. At one point, we took shelter in a shallow cave. I shivered violently, my suit's heater failing. Without a word, Lera pressed close, wrapping her arms around me. Her skin was warm, unnaturally so, like holding a sun-warmed stone. "Vathari regulate body heat," she murmured. It is a survival trait. I wanted to thank her, to say something meaningful, but all I could manage was, "You're basically a space heater." She snorted, a surprisingly human sound, and muttered, "Flattering." Hours later, we found the wreck. It lay half buried in a glacier, hull split open like a gutted fish. Inside, two figures, both unconscious, one badly injured. They weren't human. Their skin was mottled green, with gills flaring at the neck. Smugglers, maybe, or refugees. Doesn't matter. They needed help. Lera assessed them quickly, using a small device to scan vitals. One will survive. The other needs immediate cryostasis. I looked at our pack. We don't have a stasis unit. She met my gaze. I do. From her satchel, she pulled out a compact cylinder no bigger than a thermos. This is forbidden, she admitted. Only high-ranking Vathari are permitted to carry medical tech off-base. If they discover I have it, then they'll punish you, I finished. She nodded. Possibly reassign me. Permanently. I stared at her. You'd risk that? For strangers? She looked at me, her glowing eyes full of something I couldn't name. I would risk it for anyone. Even foolish humans who charge into blizzards without proper gear. We stabilized the survivors and began the treacherous journey back. Halfway down, the storm worsened. A crevasse opened beneath me. I fell. I remember the cold, the sensation of dropping, arms flailing. Then a flash of purple and silver. Lera lunged, grabbing my wrist with inhuman strength. I dangled over blackness, heart hammering. As she held on with one arm, the other braced against the ice. "Don't let go," I gasped. "I won't," she said, teeth clenched. "But you must climb." Every muscle burned as I scrambled, boots slipping, fingers clawing at frozen rock. Finally, I rolled onto solid ground, collapsing beside her. We lay there, panting, snow falling softly around us. I turned my head. She was staring at the sky, face streaked with frost. "Why did you come with me?" I asked. "You could have stayed. Been safe." She didn't look at me. "Because when you are gone, the silence is worse than any storm." Something inside me cracked. Back at the cabin, we tended to the survivors as best we could, using Lera's hidden tech to keep them stable until the official rescue team arrived. Days passed. The storm cleared. The skies returned to their usual swirl of pink and indigo. But things were different now. Lera still cleaned, still brewed tea, still folded my clothes into perfect little cubes. But there was a new tension in the air, unspoken, electric. One night, as we sat by the fire, I finally broke. "I think I'm in love with you," I said, voice barely above a whisper. Silence. She didn't move, didn't blink. The fire popped. Outside, a nightbird called. Then, slowly, she turned to me. Her expression wasn't shock, nor rejection. It was recognition, like she had been waiting for this moment all along. "You humans," she said softly, "are so reckless with your hearts." I swallowed. "Is that a no?" She reached out, her cool fingers brushing my cheek. "It is not a no. But love, to my people, is not a word. It is a process. A commitment measured in actions, not declarations." I nodded. "Then I'll act. Every day. However long it takes." A small smile touched her lips. "You already have." She leaned forward, and though she didn't kiss me, the space between us felt charged, sacred. "But there is something you do not know," she added. "My assignment here, it ends in 10 days. I am to be reassigned to another sector, possibly another planet." My stomach dropped. "Can't you refuse?" She shook her head. "Our society does not allow personal choice in duty. To resist is to exile oneself." "Then exile," I said fiercely. "Come with me. We'll go anywhere. Earth, Mars, a space station in the middle of nowhere. Just don't go." She didn't answer that night. The next morning, she didn't come. I waited, checked the path, scanned the horizon. Nothing. By afternoon, I was pacing, heart tight with dread. Had she already left? Was this goodbye? I nearly packed my bags, ready to abandon the mission, when a knock came at the door. It was Lera, but she wasn't alone. Behind her stood 3 figures in flowing gray robes, their faces obscured by hoods, their skin the same deep purple as hers. Vathari elders. My breath caught. This was it, reassignment. Or worse. Lera stepped aside, letting them enter. The tallest one spoke, their voice resonant, genderless. "Joran Vale, you have disrupted the balance. I stood straighter. If helping people is disruption, then yes. The elder tilted their head. You have formed an emotional bond with a Vathari caretaker. This is forbidden. Forbidden, I shot back. Since when is caring about someone a crime? It is not caring that is forbidden, the elder said calmly. It is attachment without structure. Love without foundation. I opened my mouth, but Lera stepped forward. I petition for bond recognition, she said, voice steady. The room went still. The elders exchanged silent glances. You understand the implications? One asked. If granted, you will no longer serve as a caretaker. You will be required to undergo union trials. And if found incompatible, both of you will face social disconnection. Lera didn't hesitate. I accept. The lead elder turned to me. And you, human? Are you willing to submit to our ways? To prove your love not through words, but through trial, patience, and sacrifice. I looked at Lera, at her quiet strength, her impossible kindness, the way she saved my life without hesitation. I'd walk through 1,000 blizzards for her, I said. Try me. The elder nodded slowly. Then the trials begin tomorrow. That night we sat by the fire again. No words, just presence. Lera rested her head on my shoulder, a gesture so intimate it made my chest ache. Scared, I whispered. Terrified, she admitted, but also hopeful. I wrapped an arm around her. Outside, the twin moons rose, painting the snow in silver and amethyst. Somewhere beyond the stars, Earth spun on, unaware of the man who had fallen in love with a purple-skinned alien made in a wooden cabin on a forgotten planet. And as the wind whispered through the pines, I knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. The trials began at dawn. 3 robed elders stood in a circle of ancient stones high above the cabin, where the air was thin and the wind carried voices like echoes from another time. Lera stood beside me, her posture rigid, her silver hair tied back in a ceremonial braid I'd never seen before. She wore a long, flowing tunic the color of twilight, threaded with faintly glowing patterns that pulsed like slow heartbeats. The elders didn't speak. They simply raised their hands, and the ground beneath us shimmered, revealing a series of intricate carvings etched into the rock. Symbols of fire, water, silence, and shadow. The first trial, one elder intoned, is of endurance. You must survive the Valley of Echoes for 1 full cycle, without speech, without tools, without aid. I blinked. Wait, no talking? At all? Lera gave the slightest nod. It is to test whether your bond can withstand isolation, whether you rely on words or on presence. We were given only cloaks and sent down into the valley, a deep gorge where sound twisted and bounced in unnatural ways. Whispers became screams. Footsteps echoed like thunder. By nightfall, we huddled beneath an overhang as frost crept across the rocks. I wanted to ask if she was cold, if she needed my coat, but the rules were clear. No words. So instead, I pulled the cloak around both of us, pressing close. She leaned into me, her warmth seeping through the fabric. That night, under a sky streaked with comet trails, I realized something profound. Our silence wasn't empty. It was full of glances, gestures, the way her fingers brushed mine when passing a piece of dried fruit, the way she smiled with just her eyes when I offered her the last sip of water. On the 3rd day, we faced a pack of skarns, 6-eyed predators that hunted by mimicking human voices. One called out in my voice, Joran, over here. I found shelter. I froze, but Lera grabbed my arm, shook her head sharply. Then she pointed to her ears and tapped them twice, then pressed her palm flat against her chest. Listen not with ears, she seemed to say, but with heart. I understood. The real Lera wouldn't call me by name. She'd just look at me, and so we stayed hidden until the creatures passed. When we returned, the elders nodded in approval. You have passed the first trial. Now comes the second, the trial of memory. This one was stranger. We were led into a cavern lit by bioluminescent moss, where pools of still water reflected not our faces, but scenes from our pasts. My university classroom, my mother's funeral, the day I boarded the transport to Zentra 7, suitcase in hand, heart heavy with unspoken grief. And there, clear as glass, was the moment I first saw Lera walking up the mountain path, sunlight catching her hair like liquid starlight. Then the visions shifted. I saw her memories, a young Lera, kneeling beside a dying elder, whispering promises in Vathari tongue. A ceremony where she was marked for service, her hands placed upon the stone of duty. And then, something that made my breath catch, a file, hidden in the archives of her people, labeled Human Contact, Emotional Risk Assessment. It listed me, Joran Vale, and beneath it, a note. Subject shows elevated emotional resonance with caretaker. Recommend early reassignment to prevent attachment. My stomach dropped. They had planned to take her away. Long before I even realized how I felt. Before I could react, the vision changed again. Lera, standing before the council weeks ago, pleading, "He is not just a subject. He is kind. He listens. He sees me, not as a servant, but as a person." One elder replied coldly, "Seeing you is irrelevant. Your purpose is to serve, not to be seen." Tears burned my eyes. She had fought for this, for us, and I hadn't even known. The trial ended without explanation. The elders merely said, "The heart remembers what the mind tries to forget. You have both passed." But the third trial, the trial of choice, nearly broke us. "You must each enter the mirror chamber alone," the lead elder declared. "There you will face a decision, to stay together or to walk away. And whichever one chooses to leave, will have all memories of the other erased." I turned to Lera, panic rising. "No, that's not fair." "It is the final test," the elder said. "Love cannot be true if it is not freely chosen, even if the cost is oblivion." We were separated. Inside the chamber, the walls were made of shifting crystal, reflecting infinite versions of myself. Some showed me back on Earth, teaching students, laughing with friends. Others showed me old and gray, living alone in the cabin, surrounded by books and silence. Then, suddenly, a door appeared. Beyond it, a life with Lera on a neutral world, far from Vathri law. We built a house by a lake, grew strange flowers together, spoke 2 languages at once, stumbling over grammar and giggling. I saw her pregnant, saw her holding a child, half human, half Vathri, with purple skin and curly brown hair. I saw decades pass in seconds. Joy, struggle, love worn smooth by time. And then, another door. This one led to peace, to simplicity. I returned to my old life. No pain, no longing, just emptiness disguised as calm. A clean slate, but as I reached for it, a whisper echoed. "You will never remember her smile, or how she saved you from the crevasse, or the way she hummed your lullaby when she thought you were asleep." My hand trembled. I stepped toward the first door. The chamber dissolved. When I emerged, Lera was already there, tears glistening on her violet cheeks. Without a word, she ran to me and wrapped her arms around my neck. I held her like I'd never let go. The elders watched in silence. Then, slowly, they removed their hoods. Their faces were not stern. They were moved. "The bond is recognized," the lead elder said. "You have proven that love, even between different worlds, can grow roots deep enough to shake mountains." Relief flooded me. We could stay, together. But fate, it seemed, wasn't done testing us. 2 days later, a new signal came in, this time from the Vathri underground city. A distress pulse. Not from the elders, but from rebels. Lera's people were divided. A faction opposed to the rigid caste system had risen, demanding freedom of choice, emotional autonomy, the right to love beyond duty. And they were being hunted. "They call themselves the Dawnborn," Lera whispered as we studied the encrypted message. "They are mostly young ones, dissenters, outcasts." Her voice cracked. "My sister is among them." I looked at her. "Then we have to help." She hesitated. "If I go, I may never be allowed back here. The elders might revoke your permit. You could be exiled too." I took her hand. "Since when do we care about permission?" We descended into the ice caves beneath the planet's surface, where the Vathri cities pulsed with soft blue light, built into the very veins of the world. The air was thick with the hum of energy conduits and the scent of minerals. It was beautiful and oppressive. Rows of identical dwellings, silent workers moving in perfect rhythm, children trained in silence. No laughter, no touch, no art. We found the rebels hiding in a forgotten sector, survivors crammed into tunnels lit by stolen glow crystals. Lera's sister, Nera, was younger, fiercer. Her white hair cropped short, her eyes blazing with defiance. When she saw Lera, she didn't smile. She accused. "You left," Nera spat. "You served the humans. You forgot us." "I didn't forget," Lera said softly. "I learned. And now you bring a human here?" Nera glared at me. Do you think he understands what they've done to us? How they erase emotions? How they condition us from birth to suppress everything that makes us alive? I stepped forward. No, I don't fully understand. But I love her. And if loving her means fighting for your freedom, then I'm in. Lera laughed bitterly. You humans always want to save everyone. But this isn't a story with a hero. This is war. That night, the hunters came. Black-clad enforcers, armed with sonic disruptors and neural dampeners, stormed the tunnels. Alarms wailed. People screamed. I grabbed a fallen weapon, more like a tuning fork than a gun, and swung it wildly, disorienting one attacker long enough for Lera to shove him into a wall. She moved like a storm, graceful, precise, using her knowledge of the tunnels to guide refugees through secret passages. I followed, dragging an injured rebel, firing the device at anything that moved. In the chaos, Lera was hit. A neural blast struck her chest. She collapsed, gasping, her body convulsing. Lera dropped beside her, pressing her hands to her sister's temples, chanting in Vathery. A soft glow spread from her palms. Minutes passed. Then Lera breathed steadily. She lives, Lera whispered. But they will come again. Stronger. We couldn't stay. With the remaining rebels, we fled deeper, into the core caves, a place even the enforcers feared to go. Legends said the planet itself spoke there, its molten heart pulsing with ancient energy. Bioluminescent fungi carpeted the walls, and rivers of liquid light snaked through the rock. In the center stood a massive crystal spire, humming with power. This is the heartstone, Lera said. Our ancestors believed it connected all Vathery minds. If we activate it with a unity frequency, it could broadcast our message to every citizen. Free them from mental conditioning. But it could also destroy the city, I said. She looked at me. Sometimes to heal, something must break. We worked through the night, decoding the activation sequence, linking rebel tech with Vathery science. I helped where I could, though most of it was beyond me. Still, Lera kept glancing at me, smiling faintly when I made a joke to ease the tension. Only you would crack a joke about alien crystals while the world ends, she murmured. At dawn, we triggered the pulse. The spire erupted in light. Waves of energy surged outward, invisible but felt. A vibration in the bones, a whisper in the blood. Across the planet, millions of Vathery froze. Then, one by one, they began to feel. Emotions long buried surged to the surface. Grief, joy, anger, love. Workers wept. Elders clutched their hearts. Children laughed for the first time. The system cracked. By midday, reports flooded in. Cities in revolt. Enforcers laying down arms. Council chambers emptied. The old order was collapsing. But victory came at a cost. The energy surge destabilized the ice crust. Tremors shook the planet. Cracks split the surface. The cabin, our home, collapsed into a fissure, swallowed by the earth. We stood on a ridge, watching the smoke rise, the rebels behind us, weary but alive. Lera leaned into me. Everything is gone. I wrapped my arm around her. Not everything. She looked up. What do we do now? I smiled. We build something new. We didn't stay on Zentra 7. Not as it was. The planet needed time to heal, its people to rediscover who they were without chains. So we left, with the rebels, with Lera now recovering, with a handful of others who dreamed of a different future. We found a moon. Small, barren, perfect. Orbiting a quiet gas giant, it had no name, no history, no laws. We landed, unpacked, and began. First, a shelter. Then a garden. Then a school. I taught botany again. Lera taught emotion regulation, how to feel deeply without drowning. Lera trained rebels into peacekeepers. Children played in the dust, laughing in 2 languages. And at night we sat outside, wrapped in blankets, staring at the stars. One evening, Lera turned to me, her eyes glowing in the dim light. Do you ever miss Earth? I thought of crowded cities, noisy subways, the smell of rain on pavement. Sometimes, but not enough to leave this. She smiled. Good, because I have something to tell you. I frowned. What? She placed my hand on her abdomen, and beneath my palm, I felt it. A tiny, rhythmic pulse. Not 1, 2. My breath stopped. We're having twins, she whispered. Tears spilled down my face. I pulled her close, burying my face in her silver hair. The universe had thrown storms, trials, wars, and miracles at us. And still we were here, still choosing each other. As the twin suns rose over the dunes, painting the sky in gold and violet, I knew one thing for certain. Love wasn't just surviving the impossible. It was building a future from its ashes. And ours had only just begun. Years melted like morning frost under the twin suns. Our little moon, now named Lera's Rest by decree of giggling children, blossomed into a haven. The first tree I planted, a stubborn earth sapling wrapped in thermal gel, finally unfurled its leaves, trembling in the alien breeze. Around it, gardens bloomed with hybrid flowers, purple petals with golden cores, vines that sang when touched. The settlement grew, domes of recycled alloy, winding paths lit by glowing stones. A school where human and Vathari children learned to paint, sing, and argue over whose turn it was to feed the six-legged pet lizard. The twins arrived under a sky streaked with comet fire, two tiny miracles wrapped in soft blankets. Kalen, our son, had my curly hair and Lera's amethyst skin, his eyes already shimmering with quiet wisdom. Mira, our daughter, took after me in spirit, wild curls, bright laughter, but her hands glowed faintly when she was happy, a gift from her mother's bloodline. We held them by the fire that first night, Lera snapping photos with a salvaged recorder, muttering, "I still can't believe you're a father," while grinning. Life wasn't perfect. Power failed. Sandstorms raged. Once, a misfired rocket nearly vaporized the greenhouse. But we laughed more than we panicked. I taught the kids to whistle. Lera taught them to listen to silence. We celebrated birthdays with cake made from moon moss and honey from our brave little bees. We danced in zero-gravity chambers, floated above the dunes, told stories under skies thick with stars. One evening, as I rocked Mira to sleep, she whispered, "Daddy, is love strong?" I kissed her forehead. "Stronger than gravity." She smiled. "Then it will never fall, right?" "No, little star," I said. "It only grows." Word spread across the sectors. Refugees came, not just Vathari, but others too. Displaced scientists, runaway androids seeking purpose, even a grumpy old Martian botanist who claimed he'd come for research but stayed for the tea. Our home became a symbol, proof that different souls could grow together, root to root, heart to heart. Lera and I stood on the ridge one dawn, watching the suns rise, our children playing below with Lera chasing them like a silver-haired shadow. She leaned into me, her hand finding mine. "We were given so many reasons to walk away," she murmured. I squeezed her fingers. "But we chose to stay." She turned, her glowing eyes full of ancient light and new joy. "I would choose you in every universe, Joran Vale." And as the wind carried the sound of our children's laughter into the endless sky, I knew this was not just a happy ending. It was the beautiful, messy, radiant beginning of forever.